Welcome to Podcast 360, powered by the Podcast Academy. In 3 questions answered in 60 seconds each, you'll experience a 360-degree view of podcasting from a lineup of industry experts. The hosts of your favorite podcast will take turns interviewing each other, creating a chain of podcast knowledge and perspective. Let's meet our industry experts. Today's host is...
Hey, I'm Tiffany Grant, host of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast. You heard me last week when I was interviewed by Anthony Weaver, host of that About That Wallet podcast.
And who is our guest this week?
Hi, I'm Chisa Pennix-Brown, and I am the host of Real Ass Affirmations, as well as Give It to the People Live.
First, the game before the game. We ask our guests to share 2 truths and a lie. Our host will guess which is the lie, and we'll find out the answer together at the end of our conversation. Let's play Podcast 360.
Chisa, thank you so much for being the guest on the season finale of Podcast 360.
I love it. I get to close it out. Like if I don't do grand opening, I can do grand closing. So that's great.
Yes, exactly. So I'm so glad to have you. Now, every episode of Podcast 360 begins with a round of 2 truths and a lie. Have you played before?
I have played before. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for people that aren't familiar, you will share 3 facts about yourself, and I have to make a guess on which one is the lie. Okay. But you'll hold your answer, and we'll reveal it at the end of the conversation. So are you ready?
I am ready. Okay, so if I had to come up with this, I'm going to be honest, I don't like to lie, so this is very interesting for me. But one thing is I'm a wife and a mother of 7. I am also an author, and I also have a business membership for entrepreneurs.
I'm going to say the married mother of 7. Because I don't know if you have 7, but I'm gonna go with that one.
Well, we'll just find out at the end, won't we?
That's it. And I'm like, I can't wait to find out, because I'm like, if you've been holding out. No. But anyway, so now that we got that out the way, it's time to get into the 360 part of Podcast 360. So that means I'm going to ask you 3 questions about podcasting, and you'll have 60 seconds to answer each one. So after your timed round of questions, we can pick one of the subjects and talk about that in more detail. So are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
So question number 1, what is your favorite piece of podcasting equipment?
It is me. I thought about that question. And the thing about this is, it really doesn't matter what mic, it doesn't matter what system you're using, but I think that you being an engaging person and being able to get through to your audience is really the most important piece of podcasting equipment, because it's kind of like, why did you start it? You know, you want people to come back and listen every week. And so our most popular podcast is Real Ass Affirmations, which is my take on mental wealth to really help people to kind of embrace themselves. And so I get the chance to cuss at people almost every week and make them feel good and or bad, right? And help them to adjust a little bit into hopefully their new norm where they're making better decisions for themselves. And then Give It to the People. I get to talk to people and interview them about business. And so then it gives a new perspective every time. But I love to choose really interesting guests that maybe people haven't heard before and always give something insightful. So I am the best piece of podcasting equipment.
Oh, I like that. Okay. Yes. Because I think as podcasters, we forget about that piece. Like, we are the sauce to the podcast. All right. So question 2, you have a podcasting studio. What do people that come to the studio need the most help with, in your opinion?
Okay, so there's a slight caveat to that. We ended up closing our podcasting studio a year ago because, well, we moved to Durham, North Carolina. So we've been in Greensboro, North Carolina for the last 18 years. We moved to Durham. And so what we do now is not necessarily in a physical studio, but a lot of times what I'm doing is either we'll meet people now at the library, which has a wonderful podcasting opportunity in there, or we'll do it, online. So the studio is, I guess, kind of transitional, just depending on where you're at. But I hope that people come away with being able to really share their voice, because I'm very big on 2 things. Like, I always use the acronym WILL, what it looked like. But I also think with podcasts, people have to see you, but audibly. So you being able to really tell your value is a really important thing for me. And I love to shine light on people who may not otherwise get that opportunity.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And just rethinking what the podcast studio looks like. I think it's a gem. All right. So question 3, what is your favorite marketing channel for your podcast and why?
Well, that is a little bit interesting too, because it depends on which podcast. So Realize Affirmations, people tend to love it on Instagram. Like they go ahead because they're able to communicate and then send messages on a regular basis. But if it's for Give It to the People, then LinkedIn is the thing that really works the best for me. And so I think that it kind of makes a big difference, like where people are watching and also how you're recording it. So depending upon which system you're using, are you recording live? And then people can kind of tune in immediately. So we use StreamYard, which allows us to then cast to multiple platforms simultaneously when we're doing Give It to the People. And so we have a following that's over there on LinkedIn that really loves it, that tunes in because of the time that the podcast actually comes out. With Realize Affirmations, we pre-record those. We do not edit because it's just coming from the soul. And then we go ahead and we put them out on the platform. So it gives us an opportunity to let people kind of listen wherever they want. And as far as communication wise, Instagram works really well for that platform.
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing here is it depends.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Podcast 360 will be back in just a moment. And we're back with Podcast 360.
All right. So thank you so much, Chisa. It was great to learn more about you and nice job with keeping all those answers under 60 seconds. Was there anything that we covered that you feel like expanding on or a topic you want to go a little deeper on?
Well, I think that for me, business is really the biggest part of what I do. So my company is called Give It to the People, and my role here is the chief curator. So we curate conferences throughout the state of North Carolina and then other places. So in doing that, I think that business ownership is something that's important, and things that people should really kind of consider is how you want to do business your way. So for us, being able to give you tips and tools that it doesn't matter where you're at, if you're out of the country, if you're in the country, you know, if you're in a rural area or if you're in a city area, it makes a big difference to people to get access to that information. And so for me, that's a big thing. And then with us focusing on mental wealth, that for me is like the idea of getting your mind right and your money right. Then that's what I think Realize Affirmations does. So they could have the same audience, but typically they end up a lot of times having 2 totally different audiences. And I think that just gives, something to my Gemini lifestyle. You want to be real professional and then a little bit out of control on the other side. So that works out for me.
I feel like for me, that outlet is doing something completely different, which is like building websites and stuff for people. Mm-hmm. But that is like my creative side. Like I have to have that side. So I completely agree with you. So we're about to wrap up, but we have one more thing to take care of before we go.
Okay.
I have to know which one of those 3 facts was a lie. So for my final guess, I'm going to stick with my original answer, which is married with 7 kids. Which one is the lie?
Okay, so hold up. Now, I would say drum roll, but this is my tambourine. Her name is Tammy, so she comes out to play. So instead of a drum roll, you get a... It is definitely a lie. Okay. So I have no physical kids. Okay. I do have a stepson who is actually getting ready to turn 22. But for me, no. You see plants? Like I love a good plant. Let's keep those alive. But honestly, that's why I told you I don't like to lie. So this is the caveat. I have 7 plants. Ta-da!
Okay. I see what you did there.
You like that, right? So I am a wife, and I do have 7 plants, and those are my kids. So it's like it's the truth at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you did there. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that I was right, because you had me sweating for a minute. I was like, wait a minute.
Yes.
7 kids? I don't think she got 7 kids.
No, not in this economy. We definitely don't.
Right. Well, Chisa, it's been fun as always. Thank you so much for being a great guest on this finale episode of Podcast 360. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you? Any social media, websites, shout outs you'd like to give?
Definitely. So giveittothepeople.com. You just spell it out completely. But all of our social media, of course, because you need to abbreviate sometimes, is Give It and then the number 2, the PPL. So GIVIT 2 THEPPL. And you can find us on all of the outlets underneath that, Instagram. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Pinterest. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok. So feel free to look us up, follow, and, always leave a comment and check out the podcast, and feel free to follow and share.
Yes, thank you so much, Chisa, for being my guest. And thanks to the Podcast 360 team for having us today.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to Podcast 360, where you experience a 360-degree view of podcasting. Special thanks to the Podcast Academy and DCP Entertainment. Follow us on social media at The Ambies and at DCP Official on Instagram. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode.